is my privilege to introduce the 93rd Lieutenant Governor of the great state of South Carolina and the first female Republican Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Evette. She is an entrepreneur and a businesswoman, and she founded Quality Business Solutions, a payroll, HR, and benefits services firm headquartered in Travelers Rest. So she knows a little bit about business. Under her leadership, her company grew from a startup to one of the nation's fastest growing businesses. She received numerous business and professional accolades, including the Athenia Award and the Enterprising Woman of the Year Award. Since taking office in January of 2019, she has traveled throughout the state, and I have seen her at multiple locations, so she's probably logged a lot of miles. And we certainly appreciate her leadership as she serves the people and the businesses of South Carolina. She has dedicated her time to highlighting thriving small businesses and attracting new business to the Palmetto State. She has a passion for serving others and has guided her focus on early childhood and education, and she is a vocal supporter of South Carolina's technical college system as a pathway to career success. She serves on numerous boards of directors, and we appreciate her leadership there. She resides with her husband, David, and their 3 children, as well as her mother, Jenny. So let's give a warm Lexington welcome to our Lieutenant Governor, Pamela Yvette.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. What a kind welcome. Sorry to be sliding in at 8 o'clock, but if you live here, you're probably not surprised that we hit every piece of traffic on every road we turned on. That's just the way early mornings start. As you heard, I'm Pamela Evette. I'm your 93rd Lieutenant Governor. I'm the first Lieutenant Governor that was elected with a governor, something very new. And my job duties are very different. Since I've never talked to this group, I'll give you a few minutes about me. The prior lieutenant governors used to preside over the Senate, and they worked with Office of the Aging. But what I get to do in my new duties is I work alongside our governor. We work hand in hand like the president and the vice president. So I have the extreme privilege of being able to travel around the state, talk to people, sit down with business owners, find out what we're doing well, find out what they need help on, and kind of be that liaison to the governor's office and all of our cabinets to get them the help they need and get their message back to Columbia. I work with schools and teachers. As a mom of 3, there's nothing greater than going into a school and being able to read to young kids, listen to teachers and administrators and find out what they think would be big successes to do things within our schools. So you might say, like, how did you get here? Because that's the number one question I get. Ran a business, started it from the ground, turned it into a national company. And I always get, why did you do this? Why did you leave your company? Well, it was just a passion to serve. I got a call from the governor one day. For all of you here who ever said something out loud and then it came to be, that's kind of what happened to me. I said one day in front of 3 women that I was close to that someday I wanted to serve. And literally within 10 months, I got a call from the governor, and he called and he said, Pamela, can you come down to Columbia? And so I said to my husband, I said, I got a call from the governor. He wants me to come to Columbia. And my husband looked at me, smiled, and said, whatever he says, just say no. Don't do it. You don't have time. We have 3 children of business, our moms. We don't have time. And so imagine my surprise. I thought he was going to ask me to maybe be on a board or a commission, and then he asked me to run as his lieutenant governor. You can imagine my husband's surprise on the way home when I told him what the ask was. I got a dead silence, and then he said, what did you say? And I said, well, I said I was going to talk about it with the family. He said, great answer. And so I am so blessed. I stepped away from my business. My husband runs that. He likes to tell people he works really hard so I get to do what I love to do. And he does. And my family has been incredibly supportive. because to run for public office, you have to have a family that stands behind you, and they do. So I'm very blessed. I'm excited to be here to talk about what's happening in the state. 2020, it was a different year, right? 2019 went by in a blur. We were going through the state. The governor had big plans on tax cuts and teacher pay increases and changing what school looked like. And then 2020 happened, and everything kind of slowed down. South Carolina was the last state east of the Mississippi to tap on the brakes. We were the first state to open up. We were very focused on business, trying to make sure that we did as little as possible to adversely affect business. We never closed down manufacturing here in South Carolina. And as I sat down with the former president of BMW, Knut Flohr, he was so proud of that. He credits this administration for BMW having the best year they ever had in 2020. Their only slowdown was due to supply chain issues, which were out of our control. But that was not a unique story. Michelin had the same story. A lot of the tier 2, tier 3 vendors that process had those same stories. Those were record years. So as I sat where you sit, and running a company in a lot of different states, I used to get so frustrated. And I'm sure you felt this. Why does government never come to us at business? Why do they never ask what we can do well? Why don't they ever ask to bring us to the table and get our suggestions? Well, probably the most proud moment for me was sitting with Governor McMaster when the Accelerate SC Commission took hold. So the governor decided if we were going to get South Carolina back up and running, get consumer confidence up, get people out and spending money again, we needed to bring all the players to the table. So he brought higher education, K through 12, our manufacturing association, the chamber. He brought teachers. He brought our healthcare workers. He brought state and local government. And we sat at USC, and we all sat in a big room, socially distant from each other. And we talked about what were we going to do and how could we do it together. But one thing the governor has always been laser focused on is transparency. Making sure that not only the people in that room knew what was being talked about, but that you, the people of South Carolina, knew what was being talked about in that room. So he went to SCE TV, and every single meeting was televised. And that's where a lot of great ideas came into play. Lots of pieces of legislation that came through from Accelerate SC. Because he asked members of the House and Senate to come to that too, so they could hear what was being talked about. Because all the recommendations that were given down by that committee of very unique people from all different parts of our state were going to be the governor's recommendations to how all that federal money would be spent. So what did we hear? We need protection. We need safe harbor protection. We can't afford frivolous lawsuits, people saying they got COVID by coming to work. That got passed. We also focused on broadband. My goodness, what did we find out? We figured out where every nook of our state is that didn't get broadband. And those sometimes were not rural areas. They were little niches outside of a big city. I can tell you that firsthand from Greenville. You just go 13 minutes out of the city and you come to a dead zone. So broadband, everybody came together and said, if we do one thing, we have to move broadband completely through our state. And that really checks a lot of boxes, right? It makes education more accessible for people. It makes telemental health more accessible to our schools. Because in 2019, the governor asked that not only do we have a school resource officer in every school across our state to keep people safe, but that we have a mental health resource officer, a mental health professional, because we knew that that went hand in hand with keeping our children safe. And making broadband would make that even more accessible. And another thing is telehealth. Look at how healthcare delivery has changed since COVID, right? I mean, my mother turned 93 2 weeks ago. If I would have said to her, I'm going to pop up this iPad, Mom, and you're going to have a conversation with your doctor, she would have looked at me like I'd lost my mind. But now it's commonplace. If she's just at her 6-month checkup and everything's going great and the doctor just needs to see her, doesn't need to put his hands on her, that's really easy. And she doesn't have to worry about catching a cold or the flu from somebody that's sitting in the doctor's office that's sick. So that is where the biggest tranche of money is going to, that came in with that first wave of money with the CARES Act. You know, we continued to bring that group back together. As the governor likes to say, we had to bring back the band back together one more time when we got the ARP money that came down from the federal government. And what were we going to do with that money that came in? Using it for grants, using it with our, teaming up with our localities to do infrastructure. Because remember, all that money that's coming down has a very narrow scope of how it's going to be used. So you have to get real creative. But what the governor told everybody is this is one-time money, so we're going to do one-time projects. One-time projects that will have a big impact across our state, but we weren't going to build a bigger government. As we came through COVID, you know, we listened to business once again. Businesses came to us and said, we need workers. Workers are not re-engaging back into the workforce. So the governor was one of the first governors to pull back the federal unemployment dollars, to incentivize our workers to get working again. And we're still seeing that, right? You know, everybody's saying, why do we still have such a shortage? Over 100,000 jobs here in South Carolina need to be filled today. And it's not so much just because people aren't re-engaging, it's because the world has figured out that South Carolina is the best place to work and live and raise your kids and start your business. We're seeing growth in our companies that are existing and seeing such a look at South Carolina from people not just here in our country, but across the globe. You know, as I traveled around the state over the last few months, you go to Charleston, you look at W International, they do defense work. They are going to triple their employee count by 2024. Lockheed Martin announced that they are going to be doing a new fighter plane in the upstate. They need 500 more workers by mid-next year. And then you go down to Somerville and you look at the boating industry. I sat down and had a boaters roundtable back in July. And between Scout and Sportsman and Key West, just 3 boaters that were at the table in that area, they could hire 250 workers. Great paying jobs, between $22 and $28 an hour. These aren't the low paying jobs that people would have you think are the only jobs that are out there. These are great paying jobs. And what is the governor doing to try to boost that? Partnering with our technical schools. As you heard, I am a huge fan of our technical colleges. You know, as I sit with 49 other lieutenant governors, it is the one thing they ask me all the time. Can I get an invite to your state so I can see what those technical colleges are doing? Because everybody is talking about it. You know, I'm a mom of 3. My oldest daughter, she went to College of Charleston. She's an international business, global logistics major, always knew she wanted to do business. But my middle son, which is probably the God-given most smartest of all of my 3 children, he didn't want to go to a 4-year college. He had ADD, and so classes like psychology and sociology, those were like nails on a chalkboard to him. Math and science, those are things he loved. So we looked at mechatronics. How many of you know what mechatronics is as a degree? Very few, and this is really sad. So mechatronics takes robotics and mathematics and puts it together and puts these kids doing advanced manufacturing, right? And how cool does that sound if you're kids? Mathematics, robotics. Those kids that are coming through our technical colleges, we can't even barely keep them all the way before they're hired. Great companies from around our state, both big and small, are paying for their last years of education so that they can get them to sign up with them for after graduation to come and work. They start between $50,000 and $60,000 a year. And within 3 years, they could be making 6 figures with 0 college debt. Isn't it amazing? This is all coming out of our technical schools. But you know what probably the biggest barrier is? Us. Because for so long, our technical colleges were looked at as a second-tier option. Something that kids that couldn't get into college were going to do. That's not the way it is anymore. And you know when I realized it? I spend so much time building our business. I'm sure you guys all understand that. You go to work, you put your head down, you're a mom, you're a wife, you're building a company. And so you're not really getting involved in all the weed stuff that's going on, right? Everybody's talking about. So imagine my surprise when I told everybody at my son's school, when they asked me where he was going to college, I said, oh, Joey's gonna go to Greenville Tech. And they all looked at me and went, oh, did he not get into Clemson? Is he gonna do the bridge program? Like almost feeling sorry for him. I kept thinking, where did this come from? Because my dad was a tool and die maker. He never went to a four-year college. He wanted all of us to. And he did because my grandparents were immigrants. And they came here, and that was the test of really succeeding, is that your kids and your grandkids got a four-year college degree. But that's not the way it is anymore. And I tell that story, and I make it personal, because I would never want somebody to think that I am telling you to promote our technical colleges, but I would never send my own kids there, because I have, and I do. And I talk about it everywhere, because when we are at home with our family, or at church with friends, or we're just out in groups like this, and I never want anybody to feel like I did when they say that their son or daughter or their grandson or granddaughter are going to one of our amazing technical colleges, because their future is bright. The governor recently, this week, talked about the fact that he is going to use his gear funds to partner once again with our technical schools to get people skilled up. What we don't want or need here in South Carolina is people stuck in those entry-level positions. How are we going to get them skilled up so they could move up? That's how we're going to continue to grow. That's why companies are coming here. Companies really have caught on to what we've been saying forever. South Carolina's business is business. We're going to continue to do what we're doing and move forward. This next legislative season is going to be big. The governor's still looking for those tax cuts. You know, we had a lot of great momentum going into 2020, but obviously that halted. The one thing South Carolina is very good at, this administration is great at, and administrations before have also been very focused on fiscal responsibility. So as soon as the pandemic happened, we pretty much stopped. So we're going to keep the budget as it is. We know how much money we're getting in. Lots of states could say they went into 2020 with a surplus. South Carolina can say we came out of 2020 with a surplus. And so that's a huge testament. We're going to continue to work on that to get our taxes lower. Some really scary policies coming out of the federal government. Really scary, especially if you're a business. I think people realize that state and local government affects your lives day to day more than what you see in DC. And that's why it's so important to have good leadership at this level. We're going to continue to work on getting taxes lower to combat whatever's coming at us. Continue to make sure that we keep our businesses open and running and get you the workforce that you need. I want to thank you all for having me here today. It's been great sharing. I know that's a lot of information, but I want to open it up. I like leaving a lot of time for questions, because in all those things, I'm sure there's individual questions you might have, or just something you think we're doing great that I could feel really good about today in this early morning.
I've been in Lexington County business for 60 years. One of the things I find that problem in Lexington, we're not getting a lot of these because we don't have water and sewer throughout the county. And they say, well, we don't have the money. There's got to be money. What can the state do to get water and sewer? I have a brother who lives in Spartanburg. It's growing. Charleston is growing. I've been there. Yeah. But we're not growing like we could. Bob Morgan, who's head of the state chamber, spoke at our railroad last week. He said one of the problems in North Carolina is our state taxes is double what North Carolina and Georgia is. My brother has a house in Cashier that's made $20,000. His taxes is $1,200. If it was on Lake Murray, it'd be $20,000. What can we do to change the tax structure so immigrants would want to come here? And then we need to build houses for people who can work in these places. Tech schools is great. I had kids that went there, and then went on to four-year colleges. But they started there, and it helped them get a great start. I appreciate you and appreciate what you're doing, but I want us to see this area grow, as well as Greenville, Spartanburg, Travis, I think they're there. I want to see this area grow, because we're not getting the industry, and we don't have the water and sewer.
Well, thank you. That's a great question. So the very last set of money that came in, this ARP money, is really focused on that. And so South Carolina is getting a little bit over $8 billion. Only 2.4 is coming through the state this go around. The rest are going to localities, to counties, to schools or colleges on their own. They're getting their own piece of money, and a lot of that money is going for water and sewer infrastructure. So that is great news for you. And what the state is doing, the governor has proposed through Accelerate SC, is that we match those dollars. So, $8 billion is a lot of money to spend, especially when you have a very narrow scope. So what do we do to make the greatest impact? That's it. So we're proposing, again, it has to go through the legislature, but we're proposing that that money, they can come, smaller cities that really have a big need, come to us, and we will match them dollar for dollar on their money as long as they're using it for that. So that'll go hand in hand with what you say. And then as far as taxes, we've been saying that forever. So in my prior life, I'm an accountant by trade. Not many of us around these days, but that's what I do. And lower taxes is the way to go. I mean, when you compete in your industry, you're competing with other competitors. You know who the state is competing with? If you look at government like a business, we're competing with other states. And where are we losing to? We're losing to Tennessee, to Florida, to Texas. They had zero state income tax. And the governor brought Art Laffer in probably 3 years ago. 2019, Art Laffer came to the mansion, and he had Art Laffer talk to the General Assembly. And it was so amazing what he said. It was very simplistic. Big businesses will pay their attorneys and their accountants $2 million to not pay a $3 million tax bill. They're still $1 million ahead. But if you taxed them fairly and taxed them $1.5 million, nobody's going to pay anybody $2 million to save you $1.5 million. So what ends up happening? Businesses pay the $1.5 million, and it was $1.5 million you never saw in your budget. And that's exactly what states have found. You look at what's happening in Tennessee, the very first year Tennessee cut their taxes to a zero tax base, they had a $2.5 billion surplus. And because people were just paying because they felt like they were paying their fair share. But when the fair share seems too high, then you pay to get down to zero. And do you blame them? You don't blame people for that.
I believe our governor spoke about the gates of hell and the vaccine mandate.
Yes.
So wondered just if you could update us anything happening on the judicial front there challenging the mandate.
Thank you. So the governor did say, he said he would fight Biden to the gates of hell, but he did not say he would fight businesses. You know, the governor has been very steadfast in making sure he did not run over our Constitution, but he will protect our Constitution and our constitutional rights. And that's exactly what he's done. We've been waiting. There's 2 different mandates by the Biden administration. One is through OSHA. That's the one that got challenged and stayed on Saturday. And the other one was through contractors. President Biden came in and said, if you're a contractor and you team up and are doing work for the federal government, we're going to mandate your vaccines. The governor joined in on a lawsuit with 7 other governors, and we're fighting that the way it needs to be fought in the courts. The governor says very strongly this is an egregious overreach by the Biden administration, that the president does not have the power to make anybody get a vaccine. And he is encouraging, as he said in a statement this past weekend, businesses to not force employees to do that. But he will not reach into private business because he doesn't feel he has the constitutional right to do that, to go into a private business and tell them what to do. So he will continue to fight it. I'm very happy to see that the Fifth Circuit put a stay on the OSHA mandate that's coming down. I mean, it will be a disaster. I mean, we see what happened in New York. The city of New York put the mandate down and they closed, from what reports said, 26 fire stations. What a public safety issue that will be. So we're going to do everything he can. The governor is going, you know, he's an attorney. He's a great legal mind. And so he will fight it at every turn to protect the businesses and the people of South Carolina, to make sure that their constitutional rights are not trampled on. He'll fight it to the gates of hell. Anybody else? You guys are being very kind at 8:30 in the morning. I get third graders that come into the Capitol, and they will ask amazing questions like, how many squares of marble are on the floor in the rotunda? How high is it? It's like stump the lieutenant governor the very first time I went to my staff and said, I need to know everything about this building. It's very embarrassing. Third graders know this stuff and I don't.
Lieutenant Governor, appreciate you coming. I really appreciate all your support of the technical colleges. I've been in this workforce development world here in South Carolina for about 15 years. And I'm really impressed with all the strides we've made and the support that the state's put behind projects like apprenticeship. I think it made a big, big difference in getting that skilled workforce these businesses need. And the real thanks goes to the businesses that are supporting those projects. And even this idea that they can wait for the talent they need to graduate and then hire, they're making that investment on the front end to do it. With this labor shortage, I still think there's one piece we're missing that I'd love to see. And that's the state, whether it's Department of Employment and Workforce or Apprenticeship Carolina, or maybe it's us at the technical colleges that need to step up, I'm not sure. But we don't really have a labor exchange that clearly shows what an opportunity an apprenticeship is to people who are looking for those careers. The way those labor exchanges work now, these young folks or older career changers, they see jobs that might say, web designer apprentice, and all they see is web designer, and they think they're not qualified. They don't understand that these are companies that are willing to invest in training and development. Has that been in any conversations about how to better connect those people that like to grow into these careers to the companies that are willing to grow?
So we have things like Be Pro, Be Proud, right? Which kind of shows what the complexion of what that looks like. I say kudos to businesses because 3 years ago when we were running, then President Trump talked about businesses kind of taking the bull by the horns. So for our electricians and our plumbers, start your own apprentice programs within your associations because it's a whole lot easier to do it in the private sector than to do it in the public sector. I start making the analogy that the private sector is like a speedboat. It moves very quickly, you can turn it. Government is like a cruise ship. It's designed by its intent to move very slow. So when you see a big need, industry has done great with doing things like that. I was out at W International about a month and a half ago, and they have set up 20 bays to teach within their own program welders. They do 2 shifts of it. So they will turn out 40 welders in whatever time period it takes to adequately train a welder. So we are trying to do that. DO has done a great job, and it will continue to try to go in and target careers that we know we're really deficient on. One other thing DO has done well, so for anybody here who is looking to hire and can't seem to get any momentum, if you reach out to DO and tell them, I have 5 positions, I can't get any movement on this, and you tell them the skill set of what you're looking for, they will go through the unemployment roster. I'm gonna tell you, this was a big deal. Like all the lieutenant governors were kind of hiding under the table when I talked about this program. But they will go out to the unemployment roster and look who fits that criteria. They will get them to interview. Once they come to interview, if they don't show up for the interview or you offer them a job and they don't take it, they automatically terminate their unemployment benefits because we are making a big push to get South Carolinians working. But the other thing that we all need to do, and I've been working with DO, and this was as a mom, we need to get our kids working again. Because, you travel around and business people will say, oh my gosh, Lieutenant Governor, can't you teach our kids soft skills in school? They come out of school and they are well educated, but they don't know how to talk, they don't know how to customer service. Can you teach that? And then, you talk with parents and parents will say, Lieutenant Governor, can't you teach fiscal responsibility in schools? These kids don't know anything about fiscal responsibility. And so I sit there and I think, well, you can't teach soft skills in a classroom very well because it's kind of all theatrical. The person that's upset, it's all role playing, right? So you never get that full impact. You can't teach fiscal responsibility to somebody who's never had a job, who has never not been able to go to their friend's party because their employer was counting on them to show up for work. That's when you get the true meaning of what a dollar is and how hard it is to earn it. So as parents, we need to get our kids working again. Once we can get kids out working, I mean, it is the best gift we can give our kids. My kids all worked, and I learned really quick, when you own a business, your kids want to work for you, but they really don't work for you. When they come to work for you, everybody who works for you is afraid to tell you your kid's not doing what they're supposed to do. So do your employees and your kids a favor and make them work for somebody who will tell them they're doing a terrible job and make them good workers, right? Because that's what we need. And I think for so long, parents have kind of said, no, maybe our kids shouldn't work. Maybe there's too much pressure on them. I don't know. I don't think we did our kids a favor by doing that. And I think we need to get our kids doing those entry-level jobs so we can push those people that are stuck in those entry-level jobs up to other jobs so they are on a good career path for jobs that will help raise their families, give them a pension, and let them retire the way they want to. So that. I'm asking you to do all kinds of things this morning, right? But I think it's good because I hear what people say. And that's why I love to talk to groups like this, because I want to tell you what people are saying. Because we can't make a difference, just one of us. Me hearing about it, unless I tell you about what I hear, is never going to make a difference. So that's why it's so important to come and talk to people. That's why I love to travel the state and hear what people say. Because that's how we will make change. That's how we will make South Carolina even better for our kids than it is for us today. Oh, one more question? I'll give one more.
Thank you for coming this morning, Lexington. There's a lot of talk about broadband, that's fantastic. But I really believe as a state, we're in a pivotal position as we look toward the future. And getting this right, this one-time money, really could change not only the trajectory of our state, but the futures of our residents and those who come. One thing I'd love to lift up is those one-time projects, and they say drill down into your specialized, that sort of thing, is to look at what will still be possibly the digital divide. Okay, so if you live in a rural area, there are varied definitions of what's adequate internet service. If we leave sectors of our state behind, if we leave individuals behind, they too will continue to be behind. Exactly. Does that make sense? So there's a difference between checking the box and also providing an open access. So just love to lift that up, adequate service and great service.
Well, that's a great point. We talk about that all the time. Especially in our rural counties, you can throw money at a problem. You're all business people. You can throw money at a problem all day long and never fix the problem. It'll be a bridge, maybe calm the waters for a little bit, but it's that kind of change that changes the complexion of a community. Our Commerce Department has really been focused on Tim Scott's opportunity zones, because when you go into a rural area, and we have some, don't have a grocery store, right? They have a Burger King and a gas station. I mean, as a mom, I can't even imagine. It was hard enough to get my kids out of bed in the morning and get them to school and talk to them about careers. They give you that look. Like, I can't even imagine a mom who looks out and doesn't have those same opportunities. How do you excite your kid about future, right? And so by bringing a business to a rural part of our state, you change the entire community. You give hope to the people that live in those communities. And that's what we've been doing. It's been a really coordinated mission between commerce, between opportunity zones, between now broadband and the money that we've gotten from the federal government. We now, with this last tranche of money, will be able to do that last mile. And that's exactly what people talk about. The most expensive mile is the last mile. But we have to do it for everyone. And that will help drive business to those sectors too. When you talk about sewer and water, that helps drive business out there too. And those depressed communities don't have tax dollars doing any of that. But that's why the governor was very focused on making big impacts with this one-time money that's coming into our state. Lexington, thank you so much for having me. It's been wonderful. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.